Hi everybody and welcome to an episode of LandO's Logic. Today we are talking about the top storylines coming into stage 4. A lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of stuff to really kind of sink your teeth into when we talk about headlines, we talk about roster changes, kind of this little off week, which obviously All-Stars was still going on. Produced a lot. It produced a lot of information. It produced a ton, like I said, of kind of marquee storylines coming into stage 4. And so I thought what we could do is just kind of take the biggest ones because there was a lot. There's a plethora of moves that have gone down. I thought we'd kind of talk about kind of the biggest ones coming into stage 4. Like I said, lots of roster changes, lots of big moves that are going down. And also, depending on when this video goes up, I will either have a pick'em video for stage 4 week 1 going up same day, or it will be tomorrow from when this video is posted. So, hey, if you're watching this video later down the line and you're like, I already see the pick'em video, don't worry about it. But if you are, which thank you if you are, one of the first few people to watch this, there will be a pick'em video coming very, very soon. LandO's Lock-ins. Make sure to stay tuned for that. So we got LandO's Logic, we got LandO's Lock-ins, doing everything we can over here. All right, so like we said, stage 4, we got to talk about, first off, just first thing that comes to my mind, obviously, is what will be the headline coming into stage 4, which is Huke, despite going to the LA Thieves in a blockbuster move, one of the biggest moves that we've seen in Call of Duty League history, now on the bench after playing 4 series. 4 series with the LA Thieves, losing to New York 3-1, losing to Florida 3-1, beating the Royal Ravens in a 3-0, and then losing to Toronto 3-1. And after those results, Huke no longer on the starting lineup. Now, before we even talk about this, I do want to discuss the fact, or rather just kind of point out, give like a, I don't know the word that I'm looking for here, but just kind of a quick label. I do not know the inner workings of what's going on with the LA Thieves. I don't know the inner workings of what is going on with any team in the CDL, nor do I have interest to. So I do want to point that out. There are little things that I'm sure that every organization gets stressed out about when people talk about their team because they're like, they don't know this, they don't know that. We're making this video with the full realization that, hey, we don't know everything, but we are going off of what we know and what off we think very well could be the case. So I just want to make sure that's known. Like I said, love everybody at the LA Thieves, love everybody who works as hard as they do for their CDL teams because it is a grind. I am sure to put together a roster, to make decisions. I know that is not easy, but again, we got to talk about it because it's fun, right? It's a great time to talk about these moves, and that's what we're here to do. So just want to make sure that that is known before we get into it. So, like we said, if you have not been on social media, which at times you should take a break, by the way. Like I said, it was off week. Granted, we did have All-Stars, but it's okay to take time. It's okay to take some time away from Twitter, from IG, from YouTube, whatever you do. So if you did, which is okay, if you did take a quick little break from social media, you weren't as active, you probably missed a lot of things. The one move that we have to discuss, like I said, that will be the headline coming into stage 4 is that Huke, now back to the bench. TJ, who was taken to the bench for Huke, now back in the starting lineup. Now, in regards to this decision, it doesn't look good, right? I mean, it really doesn't because, like I said, you played 4 series. Now, like I said, we actually had the standings on the screen, and the LA Thieves currently reside in the 6th seed. They're 30 points away from Optic Chicago, who sits in 5th. And really, when you're kind of in this spot, oh, there we go. When you're kind of in this spot, like you're looking at Toronto, Dallas, New York, obviously Atlanta just probably isn't going to be catched at all because they're 100 points above the 2nd place team. Well, you're kind of in this spot, right? It is kind of barren, right? It's gonna take you a lot to move up, and it's probably not going to take you a ton to move down, given how solid a lot of the teams are in the CDL. So, with that being known, I don't know what the primary cause of this decision was. Like I said, we gotta kind of approach this in layers, and we'll get to all the other different storylines as well. But this is without a doubt the one that we have to kind of hit on probably the most, right? So, if the decision to remove Huke from the starting lineup was gameplay related, I think the organization should have known that. If the decision to put Huke on the bench for the moment, and that very well is probably temporary, knowing them, if it is personality related, I feel like the organization should have known that, right? If you're going to make as big of a move as this was, right? Not even just monetarily, but also just in terms of the way the entire CDL works, I think that you should have been more aware of adding a player like this in your lineup. And I know that you're not going to be aware of everything, right? There's no way. But when you add a marquee player like this just to put him back on the bench, it does not look good. And I don't know if this was, again, a quick trigger decision because of the standings thing, or if it is just a quick realization of, okay, this just isn't going to work, right? Okay, we figured out this is the reason why Dallas Empire couldn't utilize Huke anymore, and we've figured out why that's the case as well. We don't know, right? We do not know that. But I think that it could be a mixture of both. I think it very well could be a problem. As I know Krim had talked to Nameless about this before. Nameless has talked about this on the analyst desk at times during broadcasts. Like, we basically said, stare at the minimap, right? Stare at the minimap. That is the reason why we decided to make a change. And I said that quote roughly. That was not exactly what he said, but it was something along those lines. So I'm assuming it's probably a gameplay problem. I'm assuming it could be something to do personality wise, where maybe he has a vision of what to do on the map, and maybe that isn't in full agreement of what the other players on the team or the staff on the team, what they want to do. So it could be a mixture of those things. But I feel like if you are an organization who is going to do this major move, spend this money, bring in this marquee player, all of the things, I feel like you should have been more prepared for it. Given the fact of where you could have been in the standings, right? When you do make a decision, I feel like you always have to be aware of what is the worst thing that could happen if we bring in this player, right? You could argue this is maybe one of the worst things that could have happened. Again, it's odd, right? It's odd, and it's kind of hard to discuss because we don't know all the decisions, but kind of looking forward, right? Now that this decision, it's final, right? Huke is going to be on the bench at least for the first series of Stage 4, and he very well could be on the bench for the rest of the season. Who really knows? But I get that they go 1-3 with Huke. Before the change, they looked great, right? Before the change, when they had TJ in the lineup, the team was just clicking. But now looking forward, now that you have committed to this change, put Huke in the starting lineup, put TJ on the bench, what happens, right? What happens looking forward if this lineup doesn't instantly get back to their prior form, right? What happens if TJ or the team just does not start to click, right? What if it's just the same kind of performance? What if this team is middle of the pack, right? What if they're not beating teams the way that they did before they brought in Huke? What happens then, right? Is TJ back to the bench and we're like, okay, I guess we got to bring in Huke? Is it Venom's turn next? What made in my opinion, the old LA Thieves team click was just a mixture of personalities who all happened to feel the same way about the game. But I think it was mostly the fact that this was a team who was kind of built off momentum, right? This was a roster where Venom was kind of looked at from a community perspective as somebody who wasn't good enough, right? He was a rookie that, oh gosh, that was one of the, from a CDL rookie perspective, one of the biggest busts that we've ever seen. TJ, well, TJ's just no longer back to the same player that we could expect. Kenny, he can't really work with anybody. Now he's going to be at a main AR. Let's see how funny this is going to be. Draza, right? Not good enough to be in a starting lineup coming into the next season. Each one of these players who were kind of looked at from the LA Thieves perspective, they got a chance and they realized that the only way that they are going to be able to keep their spot or to kind of progress themselves was if they all worked together. And now I worry that chemistry, that bond, it's forced now, right? I feel like it's kind of forced now given the situation because you've got Huke and granted you have Slasher on the bench, and those are two very, very talented players. You could argue Huke looked like the best player in the world to start off the season. The talent that exists here. So now knowing that there is a pressure on the players, and now there is a known decision that who was the first player to go in case things go awry, it was TJ. And now if we start to see players take a little bit of a hit, what happens, right? Again, we talk about the standings. What if Minnesota Rocker now with Major Maniac start to improve? What if Florida start to click? Like I said, there's a lot of different things that are starting to take place. And I feel like for the LA Thieves, they've kind of put themselves in a little bit of a bind because I just want to see them commit more. And I think that could be something that bites them in the end potentially. I don't think it's going to be something that, gets them out of the top 8, but it very well could lower their position in the standings and maybe take away from a roster that was great. Again, I thought the decision to add in Huke was a smart one because their aim is for a championship. And I think that vision is a great one. But if you do make too many roster changes, sometimes that can be a problem. Roster changes by no means are a bad thing. But sometimes when you throw them in so often, it can cause some issues. And so I think because of the fact that we've seen them, make one move and then think, okay, hey, now we got to make this move. All right, let's go back to the other one. Again, you just kind of, it's like rosters at times can be like a fragile package, right? If you drop them a little bit, it can ruin the product inside. So we'll kind of move forward past that. A major storyline, without a doubt, right? Like we said, coming into stage 4, but this was not the only roster change that was made. We'll go and touch on a few of the other ones. Half the CDL made a roster change in some form or fashion. We saw 7 overall moves that were made, 7 players that are on starting lineups that were not in starting lineups or on these specific starting lineups previously. And we'll start off with what is the biggest from a player perspective in terms of count wise, biggest changes is the London Royal Ravens. Another major change for the Ravens as Zed is sent to the bench. Zaptius obviously goes to a different team, and now Alex is back, right? Didn't know what was going on with Alex. Still have no idea 100% what went down with Alex, but he is back. Had a shakier start to the season. Again, he was kind of part of the winless London team where things just did not make sense. And then now London is also bringing in Afro, who has been in the EU Challenger scene for a while. And, it is going to be one of my favorite teams to probably watch looking forward. I will say I'm a little disappointed because I thought that Zed was really kind of coming into his own. I thought from a communication perspective, this team was starting to click. And, you could argue that their run at the Stage 3 Major wasn't unbelievable, but you can't doubt the fact that this team was starting to click, right? Their hardpoint game was starting to look better. They were starting to figure out things in search and destroy. Their controlled map pool was to a point where they were looking really, really good on both Checkmate and Garrison. So I don't know. It sucks because I don't think that London needed a 2-man change. And, granted, I don't know exactly what's going to happen with Alex, but I feel like what should have been done, in my opinion, was Zed should stay in the lineup. And then from there, maybe you bring in Afro. Maybe you wait to see how the team looks in one of their first 2 series, and then maybe you implement Afro. I wouldn't mind them just instantly adding him in because it sounded like Zaptius' contract was probably done. So maybe you just go ahead and bring him on in. But I just think from a communication perspective, really just from what we were hearing a lot from London, were great things. And I think that they were starting to click. And so I think now that you just dramatically change up the SMG line, it could work out, but I think it could just be another, all right, let's restart this. Let's go and throw it in reverse and we'll just see what happens type of thing for London. So I do like one move, but again, I just think that losing Zed may not be the best thing. We'll see what happens. But again, a huge change for the Royal Ravens, another major roster change for them where, again, Shawnee is the last standing Raven on the roster. Next team, Seattle, right? Seattle, kind of an odd situation. Decimate, he's gone. We don't know exactly what happened to Decimate, why he no longer is with the team. Some speculation that he just said, you know what, I just don't want to play with this team anymore. Stuff like that. Just maybe from mutual perspective, both parties not too stoked about what went down. So now they've added Classic from the Paris Legion. And I will say, Seattle, I think we have learned that roster change wise, they may not be able to compete with some of the bigger teams in the CDL. But I think given the situation, given the players that I still have faith in from the Surge, I really don't mind the move. Again, right now, Seattle, they sit in 12th place, and you're adding a player like Classic, who's not a Slayer, right? He's not coming into this team to lead in slaying. But it essentially, I think, will be the best roster change that they've made this season. I do. I think that I like this move more than the Decimate one in terms of what I think it can do for the team, right? Classic at times can be explosive, and he also knows how to work well with players like Octane and Gunless. But this puts more of a pressure, right? This puts more of a pressure on the two players who've had the biggest spotlight for Seattle. It's not necessarily been Octane, but it has been Prestini and it has been Gunless. Stage 1, not great. Stage 2, phenomenal. Stage 3, not great. Stage 4, who knows? But I'm hoping that Classic can be there to kind of be exactly what you want a fourth piece to be, right? Kind of what I call the karma role, what I used to call the enable role when he was on when he was on 100 Thieves, right? A player who is not necessarily there to slay, but is there to pick up the pace and to help assist other players. And when one player is having an off map, a guy who can fill in that role. And so I think Classic can be that guy. I do like the change, but to me, it just comes down to more of a core decision in terms of Gunless and Prestini, right? If they can return back to form, I think we're going to see this team really step it up. It's not going to be easy. Again, being the 12th team in the standings, and you could argue that we probably should have seen a bigger move at this point, but I think given what I kind of expected out of the Surge in regards to this roster change period, I think that is a good decision. Let's go and put it that way. What next team we got here? Paris Legion. Obviously, they lose Classic. He goes to Seattle, and they bring in Zaptius. Why not? Right? Why not? Paris Legion currently sitting at 11th in the standings. 30 points outside of 9th, 60 points at a top 8. Gonna really need to see them have a big resurgence in regards to their gameplay. And it was no surprise, right? For them, story of stage 3 was even in hardpoint. Search and destroy, not great. Control, not great. And so I think if you do add a player like Zaptius, he really did start to improve with London kind of toward the ending stages. He was on a short contract with the Royal Ravens, and I think that Paris probably didn't see as much value out of someone like Classic as Seattle will. So I think that Zaptius, I think if he can play at a top tier pace consistently, which is asking a lot, or not necessarily asking a lot, but hoping for a lot, I guess is what I could say. I think if he can be a consistent SMG, play well, and look good in the search and destroys, I think that he will provide a decent amount of value for this team. Biggest thing for me for Legion, and for a lot of these teams who are 9th through 12th, I guess maybe not even for the Gorillas. I guess that you could probably net in Florida in this situation, depending on how they look at time from time to time. Find your identity, right? That is the biggest thing. Find your identity. We know, right, that you're not going to be able to be really good at all 3 game modes. There are only a few teams who have been able to master that, right? Only a few teams have been able to, and the teams that have win championships. So in order to do that, I think that these teams need to establish a defined number 1 game mode, a solid number 2 game mode. And I say solid, above even, right? Above even, a number 1 game mode that is relying on, like we're talking Minnesota Rocker to start off the season, search and destroy type of level, if you know what I'm talking about. And then, like I said, from a secondary perspective, I don't know, like a London Control. I know we're being very specific here, but like a game mode, a map, a combination where you can just rely on, and it may just be the search and destroys and the controls. And I know for Paris, it's a totally different story because their strongest game mode throughout the entirety of the year has been hardpoint, and there's no surprise in that. But they need to establish a solid, respawn team. They need to very much improve in the search and destroys. There needs to be some balance, and that is where a lot of the bottom teams really struggle, because again, you look at 9 through 12 and there is a major disparity in one game mode in particular. That's what we need to see. Minnesota, one of the bigger changes, right? Accuracy out after a less than impressive stage 3. I feel for the guy. I think the accuracy was really good. Really, I think that he's a very solid player. I think he's a great communicator, a great in-game leader. So to see him go to the bench is kind of unfortunate, but they are bringing back Major Maniac, who originally was sent to the bench for Standy, who had a great instant impact with the roster. But really, after the first 3 or 4 matches, Minnesota, they've just not been the same. And the reason why, for those who obviously saw my bracket coming into stage 3, the reason why I didn't have Minnesota beating London was because they just didn't have enough of a resume. I think that's what I said during one of the casts. I think I might have casted over their elimination game. They just don't have enough of a resume. Like Control, solid, right? Control Raid, specifically, it's good. Their control in general was fine. Search and Destroy, taking a major hit, and Hardpoint, taking a major hit as well. Like, Search and Destroy is probably more of a specific one that I thought the team really wasn't going to have a huge problem with. So again, one of the storylines that I just talked about are one of the major talking points for a lot of the bottom teams right now. Granted, Minnesota sits in 7th, so I think they have to make a move. They got to become more well-defined and something other than control. And I hope that it can be a search and destroy. I think for a team like this, if you can be good at control, at least a few of the maps, kind of set up that 2 to 3, rather kind of just a 2 map system in control where you can veto out one and have a guaranteed other. And then you just become solid to search, destroy. And then you have a team like this who we know can take over, right? Priesta, phenomenal player. Attach, phenomenal player. Standy can take over in respawns. For Minnesota, I really hope that adding a player like Major Maniac kind of well fine-tunes what their game is, improves them at search and destroy again, and kind of gets them back to somewhat of a prior form. That's what we're hoping for. And then finally, Dallas Empire. They do end up benching Fellow again, and they bring in Vivid, who was on the bench for the LA Gorillas. This is probably the most notable change, I would say, outside of Thieves, just kind of considering Dallas Empire, World Championship team, where they sit in the standings right now. And it is an interesting decision, and one that I think that they had to make given the board of players available. But I know we've been going for a little while now, so I won't touch on this too much. But I think that Vivid can be a great piece for the Dallas Empire. And I think I said this at the end of the All-Stars when we were on the analyst desk. But I don't necessarily look, like whenever we talk about this change, first series, my eyes are not on Vivid. My eyes are on the team's reaction to adding Vivid, right? I'm not worried about, can Vivid be an impactful player on the Dallas Empire? Because I know that Vivid can be an impactful player on the Dallas Empire. My question is Dallas Empire themselves, right? The core 3, where are they at right now? Because I think that the problem with Dallas at this moment, and one thing that could, and depending on how Vivid comes into this team, how he adapts to the system of what Dallas Empire already have, the problem that the Gorillas had with Vivid was that he did not work in their methodical play style. And one thing that I wanted to see of the Dallas Empire was to develop more of a methodical play style similar to what they had in Modern Warfare. Because if you look at that team and what they did to a star-studded lineup that was the Atlanta FaZe, specifically in the Champs Final, was they were methodical. The strategies were methodical. The search and destroy, the respawns, the way that they were able to be consistent and consistently crafty was impressive. Like, I remember watching the Azir Cave and Clayster was breaking down, right? Whenever he was on the Dallas Empire lineup, it was like, I think it was like that night after they won, he was breaking down the gameplay of what decisions that they made correctly on the map and the mistakes in live time of what Atlanta FaZe were making. And I want to see a team like Dallas Empire do something like that. And so it does worry me a little bit that Vivid was already in a system that was trying to do that, and it did not work. Granted, LAG, totally different team than the Dallas Empire. So I think that Vivid can be a piece, a cog in that kind of machine. But at the same time, it does kind of worry me given the fact that it has been something attempted already. So I just don't know if the Dallas Empire are going to be able to handle the pace of teams like Atlanta, like New York, like Toronto, like Optic, if they, kind of continue to be the Optic that looked very much improved at the stage 3 major, etc. So I really want to see teams kind of start to develop more of a system, or at least more of a blueprint to what their game really is. I think a lot of teams are still trying to figure that out. Dallas Empire, understandably, are trying to figure that out. And so I think this could be a great destination specifically for a player like Vivid. I think I like this change more for Vivid than I do for the Dallas Empire, because I think he's going to learn a lot. I think he's going to be able to learn a lot from players like Krim, learn from a coach like Rambo. He's going to be alongside some very methodical minds, and be alongside what I believe is one of the best SMG players in the entire world in Shotzzy. So I think from a role perspective, it could work out well. But if we're talking about, is Dallas Empire now championship ready with this team? I hesitate to say yes. Because again, I think that I'm more questioned on the Dallas Empire in general rather than adding a player like Vivid. So I think, again, there could be this situation where Vivid really does help this team, because I think that he has the ability to do that. But I am more questioned on those three players, how that they look moving forward throughout the remainder of the season, rather than a player like Vivid, who I think can provide a lot of intangibles to this team. Again, has a very high pace. I think that will need to be slowed down somewhat, because if not, I think that lowers the chances of Dallas Empire becoming that methodical team. So we'll stop it there. I'm not one to grade roster changes, but I think that there are some interesting ones. I don't necessarily think that we saw one team just totally steal it away by any means, but I think there are some good moves, and I think there are some questionable decisions that are just like, I think we all kind of get where I'm coming from on that. And then finally, we'll just kind of wrap up this in just a few, short sentences. Standoff now in the rotation. Very excited about this. Obviously, it's coming in for Checkmate Search and Destroy. And I'll be honest with you folks, not a fan of Checkmate Search and Destroy. From a casting perspective, it's just hard, right? When A Street is just not utilized. I think we might have seen somebody playing it once at the stage 3 major, but there's been 6 or 7 plants on it all season long. And so I think that just kind of goes to show the way that the map played out just was not the best for Search and Destroy. And I think for, Standoff to come into the rotation is great. Another classic Black Ops 2 map. This is my favorite map in Call of Duty history, Call of Duty esports history. So I'm excited for it. Granted, it's not going to earn a respawn spot, but I think for Search and Destroy, it's going to play well. And it does, it is kind of a shame for teams that were good at Checkmate Search and Destroy. Obviously, FaZe sticks out as one who is starting to master Checkmate S&D. So that is kind of a bump up if you are the rest of the CDL. I guess outside if you're like a Chicago maybe, or even a Dallas, who are pretty decent. I guess you could say Chicago's actually a lot better at Checkmate S&D. They're 6-2. Empire, I think we're the 3rd ranked team in Checkmate Search and Destroy, which, again, how does that team, performance wise, was that because of Fellow? Was that because of Huke's placement? Obviously it's a different team, but I think for the rest of the league, that is beneficial. And I think really just from a viewership perspective, it's going to be a lot more enjoyable to watch a map like Standoff. So I personally am very excited about that. There's going to be a lot of exciting things to look forward to, whether it's roster changes, now the new map of the rotation, just because we are kind of, I guess you could say the Champs is on the horizon. That's all I'm going to say. Champs is on the horizon. When you're in stage 3, you're kind of halfway there. It's like when you're on a trip and you can kind of see just the peak. It's like through the crust of the hill, you just see the top of the destination for where you're going to. That's where we are right now in this season. And so I think with teams kind of noticing that little kind of, off in the distance, a little cloudy, a little hazy, but you can kind of see the final destination. I think that's the reason why we're seeing so many moves. And I think that's what makes it so exciting to be a fan, because it is very clear that we are on that road and it's not too far away from ending out, which is kind of sad. But at the same time, I think it's gonna be really fun to see exactly how everything kind of continues to line out. So again, this was LandO's Logic, a little bit longer than I wanted it to be, but I think we covered a lot of things in this video. Huke no longer in the LA Thieves, all the roster changes, Standoff now in the rotation. There's probably a lot of other things that I could have touched on as well. These were just 3 things that stuck out to me probably most coming into stage 4, things that I am keeping my eyes out without a doubt. Coming in, like I said, to our 4th stage. Not our final one, but we're nearly there. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, LandO's lock-ins coming very, very soon for stage 4 week 1. A lot of great games, so make sure to stay tuned for that if you have not already done so. If you happen to get to the very end of the video, I greatly appreciate it. You can feel free to leave a like, feel free to subscribe, and make sure to, of course, follow me on the socials. As you can see here, greatly appreciate you guys. Hope that you all have a great and safe day. And make sure to tune into the broadcast, because it is going to be a blast. I'll see you all very soon.